And we all need a good team, so, I'd definitely like to acknowledge Donna Jackson, who's in the back of the room, for helping to make this event a top-notch, excellent event. So thank you again, Donna. And we also like to thank the OOSS team, they're not all here, but they'll be able to view this on video. Debbie Price, Bill Skitt, and Mary Lynn Conway. They help round out the OOSS team and help make us successful like we are. So thank you to everybody. It's been an exciting time at OOSS. I think it's fun for me in the last couple years to watch the organization grow from its central core of advocacy to growing all our other initiatives, from partnerships to charitable contributions to OOSS University and these educational things. We have strong physician engagement, and I think what one of our missions has been is to get engaged further, deeper into our surgery centers to kind of support the people that support us. And I think that's been fun to watch grow within the organization. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kent, who's going to kind of further flesh out some of these initiatives and go from there. Thank you, Kent.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Just a quick OOSS update. As Ralph indicates, we have a lot going on and a very involved board. We had a board of directors meeting yesterday and about a 98% turnout for a very in-depth meeting. And the board involved a lot of committee reports, and Ralph and I were really challenged just to try to keep track of the agenda of all the items underway. But I wanted to give you some quick update on several initiatives. First of all, an overriding initiative for OOSS is to keep our focus on the process of strategic planning. And it's no accident that today's focus of discussion has to do with strategic imperatives and the very fundamentals. And by fundamentals, I don't mean basic. I mean those things fundamental to the true business of strategic planning that will be brought to you by a master in the business and will be further expressed by masters in the business who are actually applying these principles every day in their own centers. So you're going to be exposed to some very helpful information that you can take away and immediately put into action. This also kicks off our strategic planning cycle for the Outpatient Ophthalmic Surgery Society that will culminate in an intensive 3-day session by our board in September of 2016. And in the meantime, you will be invited to participate in a survey that will be used by both the board and will be useful to you as you do what's called your SWOT analysis. And you'll learn again from the master of SWOT analysis what that's about. But it'll be an industry-wide survey, the information we will share with you that you can then localize to your specific situation. So you can be watching for that. That is helped by and brought to you in large part by the underwriting support of Alcon, who is also the primary exclusive, in fact, the exclusive underwriter of this event, but also our good friends at Bosch & Lomb will be assisting with that as well, and you'll be hearing more about that as we move into 2016. Just a very quick update on some strategic planning initiatives that started in 2013 with this board as part of that strategic planning process. One was to bring a concierge-type service to our members, and that is expressing itself in the form of OOSS Answers, which is an avenue for you to raise a question and get an answer with a personal touch. And we're with our new website, we're going to be able to automate that even more, but we get about 1 to 5 questions a week that we field among our board, among our expert industry partners, and among our members who we know to have expertise in certain areas, and we hope that continues to help you. Our second initiative had to do with OOSS Reach, which was all about reaching out and making sure we're connecting with the whole of our universe of industry members, current members as well as prospective members. And so we took what was a basic database of our members and a very loose, best we could do prospect list, and with the help of Albert Castillo, who is in the room, and his membership committee, and Dr. Frank Cotter, who leads that initiative, we have developed a comprehensive list of 1,700 centers that have ophthalmology as a significant part of their business. Over 1,200 of those are almost exclusively ophthalmology. So our industry community has expanded, and we are engaging with them accordingly. It was also about reaching out to our industry partners. And our partner sponsorship committee is working now on a list of about 50 prospective partners that we think will fit a criteria of being highly relevant to our members, offering a quality product or service, and we'll be inviting them to join our membership, which includes the opportunity to be introduced to our members once to twice a year via email, as well as to have a consistent presence on our site and to be part of a industry partners directory. The third dimension had to do with providing our members with live access to information and information that can help you articulate your advantage. We first needed to get a new website up and that could support that kind of effort, and that site's now there. Now we're working on packaged materials that you can help to sell and position you with patients and with the medical community, with policymakers and the larger community regarding the advantage that you offer to the delivery of high quality, efficient, affordable health care. And then we have an OOSS Gives initiative that is underway, both very localized. Whenever you see a speaker that is given an honorarium now by OOSS, the honorarium comes in the form of a gift to the charity of their choice. That's the localized approach. The more nationalized approach is one we're working on in partnership with the Ascaris Foundation and supporting the Operation Site project that we'll be enlisting our members to participate in, which provides additional support for them. And then finally, OOSS University. And OOSS University is a long-term strategic goal that we've been working on that has to do with courses, has to do with live events, has to do with video captures and audio captures, has to do with online courses that provide certification, continuing education credit. It has to do with a library of resources and articles and rich content. To provide us with the platform that we've been needing for a long time, we looked first to our partners at Allergan that had for years provided us with what was called Allergan Access. And over time that aged out, and for a variety of reasons we needed to phase that out. But as that was being phased out, we had some wonderful cooperation and support from the Allergan folks, and that helped underwrite a new project called the OOSS University Learning Center. And so you'll be seeing much more about that as we finish the development off over the next 6 months and launch about mid-year. We'll probably have a teaser launch, hopefully, with our next meeting in May. So be watching for OOSS University. That's going to provide you with online access to lots of resources. So with that, I want to introduce the other member of the OOSS team that represents the very core mission, in the broadest sense, advocacy, and that's Michael Romansky, whom you all know well. Michael.
Please, no. I'm humbled. It's great to be here. Let me just see if these work here. There we go. Bring you greetings from Washington, a work-free drug place. I realize there's a generation of people here who have no idea who Marion Barry was or why that was significant. Anyway, so Hillary Clinton was campaigning in New Hampshire, and she shows up at an elementary school, and after her talk, she offered a question time. And there's one little boy puts up his hand, that's a question, and she says, yes, what's your name? Oh, my name is Kenneth. And what is your question, Kenneth? Well, actually, I have 3 questions. First, why would you run for president after your husband disgraced the office? Where did you put the emails? And thirdly, weren't you lying about Benghazi? Well, the bell rings for recess. And Hillary Clinton informs the children that they'll continue after recess. They come back after recess. Hillary asks, okay, where were we? Oh, yes, question time. Does anybody have a question? Different boy puts up his hand, says, and what's your name? My name's Larry. And what's your question? Well, actually, I have 5 questions. Why would you run for president when your husband shamed the office? What happened to those State Department emails? Third, weren't you lying about Benghazi? Fourth, why did the recess bell ring 20 minutes early? And fifth, where's Kenneth? I mean this sincerely. When people say I mean this sincerely, it kind of means the other things they're saying aren't sincere. But, I've had the pleasure of working with all of you for almost 33 years, and it's been a greater professional experience than I ever could have imagined when I got out of law school. I love working with physicians and clinicians and staff and administrators who bring such passion to their work, innovators and pioneers, or as the Academy used to call you, buccaneers and charlatans. And I always like to take a quick look backward before going forward, because forward is what this program is all about. When I started with OOSS in 1983, there were fewer than half as many ASCs of any kind throughout the entire country as are represented in this room, which is pretty incredible. The cataract facility fee was $300. The professional fee was $2,500. And of course, it was that professional fee that was subsidizing the facility fee. And now, it's kind of gone the other way around. The cataract fee is about $1,000, and the professional fee is, $12 or something like that. And in some respects, your practice has become the loss leader for the facility. We have made great progress, but as we know in Washington, under every rock there's another snake. And there are battles to fight, and more in keeping with the spirit to OOSS and the spirit of our program today, there are more opportunities upon which we can capitalize. As Kent mentioned, we care very much what you think, what you want in OOSS programs, and that includes government. And so we do these focus groups, and we ask you to participate in surveys to get a sense of what your priorities are. And it's very clear in government relations that there are some key ones. Obviously, fair and adequate payment rates. Administratively reasonable quality reporting programs and quality measures. Reasonable Medicare conditions for coverage and those regulations. And that's an uphill battle. And there's another snake under every rock just looking at that category. And then a fair and competitive marketplace vis-a-vis other providers. We used to think our competition was the hospitals. Now, in some respects, it's the physician's office, So this is the question I'm going to come back to over and over again. If OOSS doesn't do this work, who will? The issues that I talk about, we get support, and I laud AO and ASCRS for assisting us, but these are second-tier, third-tier issues for them, much broader constituency. But for you in this room, who else does this work if we don't? So, this is the craziest friggin' idea ever. Office cataract surgery. Just as we've figured out how to provide cataract surgery in a safe, convenient, patient-centered, less costly environment, some bright idea comes up that let's move it to the office. And I have another idea. Once we do that, let's move it to the garage. It's even cheaper in the garage. And all of this is based upon this notion that we can do cataract surgery in the office for routine cases. Well, what is our position here? And we have 3 parts to our position. I'll make it clear. Are you listening carefully to this? No, no, and no. And while the other organizations equivocate because they have members that work in offices and might like to be able to set up shop, next door, our answer is no. And what I'm proud of this organization, when our leadership got together, I mean, everybody's yelling and screaming, this isn't fair, economically we're going to get screwed. That was the first 10 minutes of discussion. And after that, we focused exclusively on patient care, patient health and safety. And those are the strongest arguments, and they're real. So when we consider this notion of routine cataract surgery, what is routine cataract surgery? Well, what I discovered, I had 4 days of pre-med, but I'm not as trained as you are in the clinical aspects of ophthalmology. I can tell you that we don't know what routine is because, from what I understand, you don't know when you're going to have a problem until after the patient's on the table. And CMS seems to have based this idea of cataract surgery on routine cases on misconceptions about how old and how sick our patients are. They don't seem to understand, but I do think they're getting the message from us now, is that complications like TAS and endophthalmitis and vitrectomy and a dropped lens nucleus, whatever that is, I'm just reading from my notes, arrhythmias or CVA, they're infrequent, but they're life and vision threatening. And so do we want to compromise anywhere when it comes to patient health and safety? And we asked you to help us here, and you made all the difference in the world. We sent out a survey form. Typical survey responses, you hear from like 3, 4, 5%. We hear from 40 and 50%. In 10 days, we got data from you representing 400,000 cases. 400,000 cases is about 15% of all the cataracts done. So thank you for your good work. We couldn't have made the cases we did without you. And what we discovered in those surveys was that in terms of what's routine, if routine is no comorbidities, only 6% of cases have no comorbidities. 94% of our patients are sick. 56% have hypertension. 69% are taking 5 or more medications. What is CMS thinking of here? So we also decided, as part of our effort to address this, is to perform a comprehensive analysis of the Medicare conditions for coverage that you all have to meet in ASCs. And we got unbelievable help from Nikki Hurley and Bob Nelson and Maria Teitchen, people who really do all the work, which are the administrators and the nurses. And I learned a lot from that process. And we decided, we went one by one through the conditions and said, which of these conditions needs to migrate to the office setting if you're going to have surgery in the office? And we did find some that probably aren't that important. But when it comes to things like life safety, most medical office buildings can't pass the life safety codes for an ambulatory surgery center. Infection control. We are getting nickel and dimed on tougher and tougher, irrelevant, immaterial, obnoxious requirements for ophthalmic sterilization. So let's move the cases to the office where there are no standards whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense. Anesthesia. I don't think the folks at CMS realize that, yes, we use local anesthesia, but we also think it's imperative that an anesthesiology professional be present. Should non-licensed nurses be in our ORs in the office suite? And quality assurance. Are facilities going to have to develop comprehensive quality improvement programs and report on their quality like ASCs do? A lot of unanswered questions. If you haven't read our comments, go online, because we make a very, very strong case against this. So we submitted comprehensive comments to CMS, and I want to make it very, very clear again. There's none of this. What the other organizations did was there are pros and there are cons. In our view, there are no pros here. Patient health and safety warrants against this. We are unequivocally, unalterably, what's another adverb here? Really, really serious about this not happening. So what are the things that have to take place in our view before CMS should move forward with something like this? Well, first of all, they have to do a much more thorough job of understanding the risk, the patient health and safety risks of surgery in the office versus the hospital or the ASC. We're the same position as the hospitals here. We don't get to say that very often. We need to develop appropriate standards for an office facility. And you know what? They're going to have to look pretty much like ASC standards. And I got to tell you something. If they ever set up ASC standards for the office, all these people are raising their hands saying, oh, I want to do it in my office, I want to do it in my office. You won't be able to afford to do it in your office given the facility fee, because you're not going to get an ASC level facility fee in the office. All right. They need to establish a regulatory program for oversight and enforcement of office cataract standards. You know, there's no federal program to regulate physician's office. That's in the purview of the states. So how many states have comprehensive regulatory programs that involve standard development and inspections and enforcement? I'm reminded in Animal House when Dean Wormer said to Blutarsky about his grade point, 0.0. That's how many states have programs like that. And is that something that CMS wants to go along with? And then our final recommendation is, you know, before you try this on a population, 2 million cataracts a year, why don't you try this in a local area on a pilot basis and see if this makes sense? And all of these things we think are absolute prerequisites. I want to recognize all of you who submitted comments to CMS, because it's important that they hear from professionals, doctors, nurses, administrators, who understand the services that are required to perform high-quality care on a cataract patient. We're going to, I can tell you that our ally on this, the Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers, we will be meeting with CMS, without the other ophthalmology groups, to make a very, very strong case. And again, when you look at this issue, if you're not a member of OOSS, and I'm going to get to you people later, if OOSS doesn't represent you on this, what happens? Who will? I can tell you exactly what happens. The guy down the street's going to be opening up a center, you know, for about $12. And that's what's going to happen if OOSS isn't able to do the work. So we appreciate your support. So this is an issue that when I put together my budget for OOSS for this year, I had no idea was going to be on the table. And then we got all these issues that have always come up. Payment rates. I've got here the chart that shows where our rates are. And it's kind of interesting. The CMS has given ASCs a 0.3% cost of living adjustment. But what CMS also does annually is, because our rates are linked to hospital outpatient department rates, the ophthalmic procedures in the hospital have actually gone up. And so we're getting more than 0.3%. We're actually getting between 2 and 8% increases this year, which is not acceptable in our view. But it's better than the alternative. So what we feel is most important is that we get paid the same inflation rate as hospitals, which is the hospital market basket, which is typically 1% higher. We're treating the same patients for the same conditions, consuming the same resources. We should get the same reimbursement. I think we're getting closer. We are not there yet. The last couple of years, when I've met with you, I've talked about leveling the playing field. Hospitals get paid about twice as much for a facility fee as we do. Interesting piece of legislation that passed, and I didn't expect it to. I've talked to you a couple of times about this insidious, wasteful thing that has been taking place, where a hospital buys an ASC, they convert it to a hospital outpatient department, and one day you're getting paid $900 for a cataract, and as soon as the hospital buys it, you're getting paid $1,700 for a cataract. I mean, talk about government waste. And Congress has said in this most recent budget bill, no more of that. You buy an ASC or you buy a physician's office, you're going to continue to get paid at the rate you were beforehand, which is a lower rate. And I think that's a precursor for a development that I am hopeful will take place. Both the, just take a message for me, please. MedPAC and the Inspector General and others have proposed of late that there's no excuse for a hospital to get paid twice as much for a surgical procedure as an ASC. And that for those procedures that are commonly performed in an ASC, don't involve an emergency visit, where patient severity is no greater in the hospital, they should pay for those rates at the ASC rate. And the savings are, I mean, these are really big savings. We're talking about $600 million a year for the Medicare program and up to $200 million for the beneficiary. This is real, and that's every year. I mean, that gets us into something called billions of dollars They haven't done it yet. I'm hopeful they were. And I'm going to tell you, why do we care about this? And somebody's going to come up to me after the meeting and paid no attention when I said, well, we don't want to get them to let less. We want to get paid what they do. You know? I'd like Santa to come down and give me something. But you know what? It isn't going to happen. It costs too much money. But I submit to you that the hospital rates coming down is a real benefit. Hospitals are already, from what you tell me, not particularly enthusiastic about doing cataract and other ophthalmology cases. And you know something? When their reimbursement goes from $1,700 to $960 for a cataract case, and from $3,500 to $1,700 for a vitreoretinal service, my guess is they're going to be less interested. And those cases are going to move over to the ambulatory surgery center. That's a volume proposition for you. And I have to tell you something, there's a lot more money with more cases coming over than there is for our getting another 1% in our cost of living adjustment. So I think this is an important issue whose time will come. So MedPAC says every year, we don't think that ASC should get an update until we do a survey to find out what your costs really are. Well, we do not like the idea of cost reporting service. I'm not going to cost reporting. It's a ridiculous burden. Fortunately, nobody pays any attention to MedPAC, so this isn't going to happen. But we're fighting this whenever it comes up. Cost reporting makes no sense. ASC quality reporting. This has been an incredibly new regulatory horizon for ambulatory surgeries. This is in place less than 3 years. And our compliance rate is 99%. I mean, that's incredible. You can't get 99%. Other than your temperature, you can't get 99% on anything, and yet we have had that. And that's a tribute to the work that you all have done, and means very few ophthalmic centers are subject to those 2% penalties. You know, CMS gets into a lot of mischief when they start diddling around in ophthalmology. And we have a position that's very clear. If there's a measure that's going to be applied to an ophthalmic ASC, it's got to relate to the episode of care that takes place in the ASC. The information's got to be collectible by the ASC staff from the ASC records. It needs to provide conclusions that will potentially positively impact the delivery of care in the ASC. And it has to have been tested in an ASC environment. Well, CMS has not done a great job up until this point, but we've been fairly successful. We've killed off this one about our measuring hospital visits post-cataract surgery and complications within 30 days of surgery. And the dumbest idea of all was that the ASC should report on visual function before and after surgery, even though we only see the patient the day of surgery. And we didn't kill that completely, but we did end up getting CMS to make this voluntary. And how many of you are providing this data voluntarily? Thank you very much. That's called them saving their own faces, you know. The best defense for us is a good offense. And what we have been working very hard with the AAO, the ASCRS, and the ASC quality collaboration, whose mission is to develop measures for ambulatory surgery centers, and we sit on their board. We believe we need to come up with measures that make sense, or CMS is going to keep fooling around in areas they don't know anything about. And one of the measures that we proposed was to measure the incidence of unplanned vitrectomy. And CMS is already soliciting comments on that, and I think next year that will become a measure. Do we want more measures? Maybe not. But this is one that at least makes sense, might provide data that will be helpful to your facility and our facilities. We also think that TAS is rare, but it's very, very, it's critical. And so we're looking at developing a measure in this area. Again, we're working collaboratively, and CMS the folks on the quality side love working with us. And I think we're going to get our way there. All right. Notwithstanding our totally remarkable records in terms of good patient outcomes and ridiculously low infection rates, we continue to grapple with a changing set of rules for ophthalmic sterilization. I mean, the history, we used to do something called FLASH, and then in 2009, they changed that name to OOSS and said it's okay for you to do it as long as you're following the manufacturer's instructions. And then in 2014, last year in August, they said, no, you can't do that routinely. And we finally got clarification that old flash equals IUSS, IUS only for emergency use, and CMS creates a new term called short cycle sterilization, which is IUSS if you follow the manufacturer's instructions. Okay? Go figure. Well, one of the problems is we have not seen a lot of problems yet in surveys out in the field. I'm sure Regina Bohr will discuss this. But there are potential issues, particularly with the use of the Statum, because it's not a sealed cartridge. Can you believe I know what I'm talking? I can sound like I know it. There's a perforation there, and blah 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about. That could pose a problem. Not saying there's a patient health and safety issue, but saying that it doesn't necessarily meet the rules. When you have a problem on sterilization issues in your facility, please call me and let me know. We're following this very carefully. So what has OOSS done? We've convened an expert panel with AAO and ASCRS to develop guidelines for the cleaning and sterilization of instruments in the eye facility, and those will be out sometime, I think, in 2016. You all participated, ridiculous numbers you all participated in surveying. We want to survey your current practices and your infection rates. And that data was very helpful for us in getting CMS to moderate its position from last August. We're going to continue to meet with CMS to educate them, and we will be performing studies. I'm not going to be doing it in my office. We're actually going to hire a lab to measure issues related to the Statum and what happens when you reduce dry times or instruments still remaining sterile. What about reuse of single use cannulae and tips and those sorts of things. So we're approaching this from every possible direction. I'm going to skip over EHR and want to talk to you about. So we try to get our work done at CMS. Most of my time is spent dealing with these issues at CMS, but sometimes we can't get them to go along with what they really need to do. And so we have to have built some pressure on the Hill to get pressure on CMS to do what's right. And we have legislation that was introduced in the Senate a month ago and in the House about 6 months ago, the Ambulatory Surgery Center Quality and Access Act of 2015. Of these things that this legislation does, they're all important, but getting the cost of living adjustment moved to the hospital market basket is the top priority here. This will not get done without your help. And we will be ramping up our OOSS Advocacy Center in the next month or so. And we'll tell you how to send a letter to your congressman, contact your congressman, and do it all with just a few strokes on the computer. And it's very important you do that. So I come around to this slide. If your facility is not a member, please join. How many of you are members? Well, I know some of you are lying, and I've got eyes like a hawk, and I'm tempted to call you by name, but I'm not going to. I hope I've made the case to you. I mean, we don't get this job done in Washington. My two sons don't get through college without you. And it's important that OOSS is expanding. We are expanding our platform of benefits broadly into education and benchmarking and things like that. We cannot do the work we're doing in Washington with only about a third to 40% of the ambulatory surgical ophthalmic centers in the country being members. We won't be able to continue to do it. So I hope you will join if you haven't joined. You'll consider joining the President's Council. We're going to ask you throughout the year to build relationships with your legislators, to get in touch with them. Won't be very often. And the other thing that's very important, we're going to ask you to contribute to our Political Action Committee. Remember, OOSS-PAC is the only organization with a Political Action Committee that is geared towards the needs of the ambulatory surgery center. And we make a promise that nobody else makes. And you're going to get a solicitation in the next few weeks. If you contribute, I promise you will not hear from us for 2 years. And we stick by that promise. If you don't give, we'll just keep bugging you. But we really do hope that you will. So, anyway, I like to finish with sort of an inspirational story, and a very serious one, as you know. And I'm really in a quandary because I have a politically correct story to tell you, and I have a not politically correct story to tell you. And this is a democracy, and so I'm going to ask, and I want, how many people want to hear the politically correct version? And you work with HR as well, I'm sure. All right, you all voted for it. So this is a story, and this is a true story. I ran into an ophthalmologist yesterday, and he had talked about he had gotten on board. He was sitting in first class on his way to Vegas, and as he settled in, he glanced up, and there was this beautiful woman moving in his direction. He realized she's going to be sitting right next to him. And, he's kind of fumbling and mumbling. He doesn't know what to say. And he says, business trip or pleasure? And she turned and she said, this is business. I'm going to the American Nymphomaniacs Association meeting, which, of course, is here in Vegas. You can change your minds now or you can leave. And he swallowed hard because, she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever heard. And he said, well, what's your business role at the convention? And she said, well, I'm a lecturer. I use information that I have learned from my personal and research experiences to debunk some of the popular myths about sexuality. And he said, well, really? And what kind of myths are there? Is it true that ophthalmologists are the best endowed of men? And she said, no, that really isn't the case, I'm afraid. However, that actually is the Native American. Oh, that's very interesting. And she said, and another popular myth is that Frenchmen are the best lovers, but that's not true. It's really Jewish men. I was very happy to hear this. And I've also discovered that the lover with the absolute best stamina is the Southern redneck. Well, the woman became a little uncomfortable, and she blushed. She said, I am sorry. I really shouldn't have discussed all of this with you. I don't even know your name. I said, oh, my name? Tonto Goldstein, but my friends call me Bubba. Anyway, we've got 5 minutes. We got time for just a few questions. And whoops. We have a few questions. I can't believe I told that one. Anyway, so questions. Yes.
Some of the surgeons at my facility are convinced that hospital outpatient departments, a la ASCs, that get a higher reimbursement rates that are making femto lasers available to their surgeons at no cost to the surgeon is a stark inducement to referral, and they're convinced that those are going to get shot down. What's your opinion?
No, the hospital is entitled to, with its facility fee that's twice ours, to buy whatever equipment, to use whatever supplies, to apply whatever drugs they want, and I don't see how that's I don't see how that's an incentive, an illegal incentive. But I'll tell you something: when their rate gets cut to $900, they won't be buying a lot of femtos. Any other questions? Okay, well, yes.
Mike, how cooperative has AAO has a fly-in once a year, the mid-year forum onto the Hill. ASCRS does not solely, but with other ASC groups. How helpful have they been in taking our issues to the Hill? I've gone with mid-year forum annually for 15 years or however long they've been going, and rarely we have had an OOSS issue that has gone with them. Is that their choice? Is it ours?
I think in fairness to those, and again, I want to make the point that in the last for many, many years with ASCRS, certainly for the last 7 or 8 years with AAO, there's been a very cooperative, collegial government relations effort. But realistically, the AAO has 20,000 members, and what percentage of those are doctors that are operating in ASCs? Probably the ones that account for most of the revenues, but, that aside. But and ASCRS, they're dealing with big medicine, big ophthalmology, physician payment issues. We aren't covered a great deal in those because the issues are not as big. However, what I believe that we are going to be doing this fall, or actually it'll be in June, the Ambulatory Surgery Center Association does a great fly-in which focuses exclusively on ASC issues. And we are thinking very seriously of lending our hand and kind of making that an ASCA OOSS joint effort, and we'll encourage you to come in for those. It's very, very helpful. I'll tell you, I'm going to say something that's more helpful than your coming to Washington, is you're inviting your representative to come to your facility. You don't have to do a fundraiser either. We've done this. Stephanie, who you met earlier, Stephanie Harvey, has done this twice now in Wisconsin and in Minnesota, And Ralph, our president, and his wife put on an event for their congressman, which I went out to. And, it's great marketing, if we want to be crass about it. Not only do you get the senator's staff or maybe the representative himself, but you get your state legislators there. You get the local media there. You get the state insurance commissioner there. And it's just an hour and a half of your time. And they get to see, maybe at some places they get to see surgery, by a surgeon more competent than Dr. Chu, but they get to see surgery. And there's nothing, if you can remember the first time you saw surgery, I still marvel at it. And these legislators, they don't know what an ambulatory surgery center is. That's actually more effective than you're coming to Washington. So I'd encourage you to do that. Time for one more question.
I just wanted to mention to you, right here,
Thank you.
that we got a notification just before the 1st of October that in the state of Washington, Primera, I had to read it several times, was no longer going to be paying the facility fee for HOPDs that when they turned it in.
Really?
Primera. And I thought, that's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Well, oftentimes the government's following the private sector. I think we're going to get there. We need another. We need another fiscal crisis. And we're always within a year or two of that, because then they realize, $600 million a year—that's real money. So I think we're going to get there. I think it was a courageous and smart move by the government to cut out basically put an end to these acquisitions of ASCs and converting them to hospital outpatient departments. So anyway, thank you again for all your support.